It's time for a City Channel Dubuque featurette.
The whole point of artists making art is usually to share, some kind of inspiration, some kind of thought or emotion. And if it's not being shared, it feels incomplete.
Art is whatever the viewer sees it to be. I have no intentions that I'm going to voice to anybody.
I'm Jessica Techmeyer. I'm an artist and assistant professor at Clark University here in Dubuque, Iowa. My piece is titled The Human Shadow, and it's cast bronze of a newborn white-tailed deer casting the shadow of a wolf, and the head is visually distorted as if a slow-motion blur has permanently morphed the physicality. So the deer is a timid animal that's shy, and by comparison, in Little Red Riding Hood, for example, the wolf is portrayed as aggressive or cunning and is a carnivore. So by contrast, the two creatures marry this beautiful duality in the piece. And the deer and the wolf, though they are different, neither is bad or good, they're just different. So I really like that idea, and I want the viewer to think about how parts of them have been tamed and what did they choose to tame as they became adults. Scale is really interesting. With this piece, it's very small, and the viewer really dominates over the work. And I really wanted that connection between the work being small scale and the viewer, or adults at least, that can think about the concepts dominating over them.
The piece is called Riverboat Bench, and I went on Wikipedia when I heard the call for artists for Dubuque, and I wanted to get a piece sited up in this city. And I did research, found out a little bit about the history, the port of Dubuque. I designed a piece that used my signature style of polished geometric shapes interacting with these spiral, curving, organic forms. And so what I did is I designed a piece to represent the riverboat traffic and the riverboat history. I'm very happy with the location of the piece. It's up here on the river levee. It's overlooking the river. It's exactly where it needs to be. It has the river as background. Public art is important because it creates a sense of place, and that's the main thing that I wanted to do with this sculpture, is to help identify what makes Dubuque special. I felt real upbeat that my piece was accepted for the show, but that's half the battle. I want the piece to find a home here in this town. I want to have one of my signature sculptures represented in Dubuque.
Jim Johnson from Charleston, Illinois. Title of the work is Prairie Walker. And Prairie Walker is a reflection of experiences I had while living in the southwest and midwest part of the United States. Prairie Walker is a series of sculptures I've been working on, which I'm very interested in engaging the public in viewing and experiencing art. So each person will perhaps bring a different sort of point of view to it. The piece is made out of core 10 steel. It's a architectural steel, has a very high tensile strength, and the process that I use is do a lot of drawing. I'll do a lot of sketching and developing of concepts and ideas, and then I'll build a very small scale model, and then I'll convert that into a large scale, almost full-size model, and then begin to cut the shapes out of the core 10 steel. The main thing is a reflection of movement. If you look at it closely, it's comprised of straight lines and curved lines. Those curved lines kind of overlap one another, and you get this sense of movement across a space. And in my case, the reflection of moving and running across the prairie. One of the pleasures of designing and fabricating sculpture at this stage of my life is given me an opportunity to work with my youngest son, Tyler. He's been a tremendous help in cutting and grinding the steel and helped me to fabricate it.
My name is Guy Belliver. I'm from St. Charles, Illinois. And yesterday I delivered 2 pieces of my series, the Quark series, Quark number 6 and Quark number 7. Well, about 5 years ago I had a one-man show at Batavia's Fermilab National Accelerator. And trying to get excited to do something new for that show, I was thinking about Fermilab and what they actually do there. And they're a particle collider is what they do. They collide particles, and the only way they can view what happens is through a negative on a photographic plate. And what it shows is these particles colliding and then disintegrating as they explode out from a certain point. I decided to take the particles going from the explosion from one mass into another mass. So as you notice on my pieces, the black wires represent those particles which are then disintegrating out of wherever the explosion was, and then going back into another mass. I have these solid areas which are painted in some very subtle colors, and then the black of the steel rod represents the particles and their disintegration and moving into another mass. I started out working in stone and all the energy that's involved in that, and the energy, I hope you see, these pieces are sort of what I feel convey some energy, not only in their title and what I was trying to do, but there's a lot of movement, and if you're viewing the piece, your eye will follow it from one section to another. So to me that also conveys some energy, and which is one of the other things I was trying to convey in the piece.
Hi, my name is Jason Lowry. I'm from Williamsburg, Virginia currently, where I teach at William and Mary. This is my sculpture, Conscious of Her Shores. Conscious of Her Shores came about while I was living in Detroit. I moved there from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'd spent about a year and a half there, kind of soaking in the culture shock and the different kind of landscape. I grew up on the edge of Phoenix in the desert. The desert was constantly being turned into the suburbs, and I watched the whole neighborhood kind of develop. So looking at framed houses and construction, and then moving to Detroit, seeing how it was kind of the opposite end of things, kind of things falling apart and deteriorating. And there were some moments where I would be looking at things falling apart or things being built. I noticed how the lines of volume and light and how things kind of sat there reminded me of some of the construction sites as a kid, and were really kind of an inspiration. I don't want to kind of club people over the head with what I was thinking about, but I do want them to be inspired, to find it interesting, maybe to find some kind of beauty in it, even though it is about a kind of a decay process.
My name is Banak Tamavong, and I'm the creator of Coneflower Cluster. Coneflower Cluster is a collaborative effort between Mark Ginsberg of Ginsberg Studios, myself, and physicist James Wetzel. It's a piece that expounds on the relationship between human nature and the rest of the universe. The nature portion of it is its relationship to the coneflower. I designed the piece to look much like a coneflower, where you have the center portion up at the top with all its knobby kind of redness, and then the bottom portion is just silvery petals that are kind of in the wilt state. So at the portion where it's waning in the sunlight and it's kind of just closing up on itself. Its relationship to the universe is the most interesting portion of the piece. It detects muons, which are cosmic particles that kind of hit us every day and we don't even know about it. They're invisible. But essentially what happens is the muons hit the board that's inside, a little electronics board. It senses them, and then it emits a light at the top portion of the part, and it blinks every time it gets hit. In this way, I kind of hope that the viewer gets to see something that's earthly and cosmic all at once.
Hi, I'm Ken Thompson, and this is my sculpture, Inverted Arch Steel. This is the inverted arch steel. I've done this piece a number of times in different materials. It's also been done in limestone. It's been an image that I've worked and reworked, and what the series is about is dealing with negative space, not the positive form, but the negative space that surrounds it, which is what defines the work itself. This is Corten steel. It's intended to rust, and the material will corrode 10% of its thickness and then seal itself up. The interesting thing about rust is it talks about time and decay and just moving forward. As one thing fades away, another thing comes into view.
I'm Kristen Thielking.
I'm Kevin Brunette.
And our sculpture is called Moving Compasses. And it's a steel and glass piece, and it's installed as a grouping of sculptures that are moving in one direction, or implying movement in one direction. The pieces have a found cast iron wheel at the base that we have found, and they're all different. And then we fabricated the steel that comes up and attaches to the glass, and then we cast the glass. The glass is about 6 different layers of sheets of glass, some colored, some clear, and the glass has imagery that has been silkscreened with enamels in between the layers, so it looks like the imagery has depth, as if you were looking into water and you were seeing things at, at different depths. We were inspired by navigational instruments, mostly maps and compasses, depth charts, buoys, to kind of reference a journey. We wanted the piece to imply that a group of individuals are on a movement, on a journey, kind of a life's journey. The piece is really meant to be connected with a site that has water in it. The movement of the river really lends itself to that idea that we are moving in a direction, and those navigational instruments are primarily nautical.
My name is Jeff Beauchart from Charleston, Illinois, and the name of my piece is Interstellar Knot. The piece was created in a model form back in Charleston, and then I had a crew of people helping me. Jim Johnson, his son Tyler, I had Kevin Eric, who was working with me, and a professional welder whose name is Gary Fuller. And they worked with me to get the piece tacked together on Monday, welded together on Tuesday, assembled Tuesday afternoon, and then Wednesday morning real early we got a crane here, welded the last components together, lifted it on the site, and so we did a fairly large piece in about 2 days. The whole idea is that when you look at the sculpture, you not only see the sculpture, but you see the surrounding. The boxes form frameworks around what you see beyond them. And so it's not only the object itself, which is the sculpture, it's also what you see through the sculpture. So it's one of those things where it's meant to be somewhat fun, stacked blocks, tipped, something kind of in motion but not in motion, something very asymmetrical but yet symmetrical, and something that takes your eyes up and off the ground. To actually be able to come here as a professional and participate in it is just a little bit of a dream come true for an Iowa boy.
It's so great that Dubuque wants to put on this show. I think it's a real service to the community.
It helps to engage the public in conversations about art and how it impacts upon their daily lives.
I think it's great to expose the community to fine art, and a community that maybe not 100% of it's going to walk into the museum on a regular basis. So when they're walking down here, they've come upon it.
Gives people something to look at and think about, maybe be inspired by, or complain about if nothing else, I guess.
The Mississippi is such a powerful metaphor all on its own, and it speaks to the power of many things, and by including sculpture along with it, it speaks to the power of art.
Featurettes are short films set in and about Dubuque that air at various times throughout the day on your local government channel, City Channel Dubuque.